Welcome back. When we look at what we're really learning in college, and once again, college class here, you got to get this frame of mind. Elementary prepares you for junior high prepares you for high school prepares you for college prepares you for life. College prepares you for how do I think deeper? Not just how do I get an A or a B or a C or a D in psychology. It's what makes me think. So what you'll hear in college a lot of times is you'll hear of something called schools of thought. Okay, so these are schools of thoughts of psychology. It's like what twist are we taking? How do we present things? How do we know when we talk about psychology? What do we think? What angle are we taking on that? Because in this world there's lots of schools of thought out there. And there's more and more every day. And in your world and in your society, you're going to get schools of thought that are way out there. You're going to get wild ones, and you're going to be like, okay, wait a minute. Is this psychology or is this not psychology? Is this life? Is this not life? And I mean, we don't even have to go into very many subjects to go, wow, is this science or is this way out there? So we have to stop and think, what are the schools of thought of psychology? So it's important that we look at the different ways to look at psychology. So I'm going to give you these. Now be thinking about them. You're going to take the notes, but once again, you're going to have an assignment at the end. Which type of psychologist am I? Okay? What's my school of psychology? So you're going to look at these and say, okay, how do I think? What's my angle on these? Okay? And so what's weird is you're going to think, well, isn't everybody that angle? And you're going to look at it and be like, no, that person's really, they're really a humanistic, or they're really a Gestalt, or they're really whatever. And then you're going to look at some people who aren't anything, and you're like, well, of all these things, where are you coming from? And so in your society, we're going to have to really sort out what's real, what's good thought, what's bogus, what's not even related, and what's just things we haven't looked at yet. So, really important. So, these are schools of thought of psychology. Okay. So, one of them is empiricism. Okay. And the idea behind empiricism, it's knowledge originates through experience. Oh, okay. So, the more of these we do, the more you'll begin to kind of relate. Okay. So, this is saying that if you experience something, then you truly know about it. Okay. And that's pretty true for a lot of things. And that's not really very good if you're a reader, unless you say empiricism means that you experience it if you read it. Oh. Well, there's probably a lot of you that love to read, and you're like major empiricism people because you believe if you read it and you can relate it to things you've done, then that's knowledge. Boy, wouldn't we like to buy into that? And that's a true statement. If you're an empiricist. If you're not an empiricist and you're not in the psychology of thought that you have is not empiricism, you probably don't like to read anyway because you don't really relate what you read to knowledge or experience. So for example, I might say, what does the Eiffel Tower look at? And you're kind of like, what does it look like? And you're kind of like, well, somewhere in my mind, somewhere there's a deal that says that it's some kind of shape like this. Maybe we saw a picture, maybe we saw something. Maybe we said, now what's that Eiffel Tower thing again? I mean, maybe we don't have any clue. But I don't know. I've never been to Paris, never been to France. Might be fun to go sometime. I'm sure my wife thinks it would be a good idea, so we probably will. Okay, sometime, not today. We're going to have to do this. Okay, so we got this deal here to where if I ever go see the Eiffel Tower, once I see it, I'll know exactly what it is. Now, this is the same thing. Empiricism is trying to talk to somebody in psychology and say, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Oh, because your experience relates to your knowledge. I have a daughter. I have a daughter that we were at a fair one time, and she was going to go show animals, and she slammed her hand in the door of the car, and right as she was going, the door we almost had to go unlock. I think we had to go unlock the door to get her out. And so if I go up to her and I say, Shay, gosh, I know how you feel. She's like, I don't think you do. Here I sat with my finger in the door. I don't think you know how I feel. you might be able to relate to it. But empiricism says knowledge originates through experience. So that's pretty good too. So that's experiential. That's experience it and know it. All right. So then there's structuralism. Structuralism, it's associated with the word consciousness. Now, let me tell you the philosophy of teaching that we do. All right, and if you've got me, if you ever take some other classes, I teach human anatomy, I teach chemistry, I teach these psychology classes, I teach abnormal psychology. What we try to do is we try to have less garbage in, less garbage out. So we try to make these associations simple. Okay, so the true definition for structuralism is the degree of which we notice what we're conscious about, and then that allows us to perceive it. But that's a long definition. So we can memorize that unless you've got a photographic memory, and I don't. I have never in my empiricism. I don't have that, so I can't relate to that. But structuralism says we can't really know something unless we're conscious of it. Oh, how many times have you, and maybe it's been your parents, maybe it's been somebody else, expected you to know something that you just weren't even conscious about? Or you expected somebody else to feel, you've had a bad day, and you kind of hint to them, you're kind of like, man, and even without saying it, you kind of expect them to say, man, I'm sorry you've had a tough day, and they're kind of like, what's your problem, man? And you're like, you don't get it at all. So structuralism means you have to have a level of consciousness. You have to actually process it through your brain to be able to understand it and then cause behaviors to react on it. So structuralism is consciousness. Functionalism, how we use the learning we have to function. How we use our learning to function. So that's saying in functionalism, when we look at the function of something, it's like we may have learned to do something or not to do something, but functionalism says, well, we have a choice. We have a choice to use this learning however we want to use it. So somebody goes in and they teach you how to do. We use a school analogy here. Okay, they teach you how to get up in a fire drill, how to stand up, walk out in single file, and then all of a sudden we have a fire drill. And only in America do we question it. We go, what is that? What is this a real fire? What do they have? I mean, in China you wouldn't question. You'd get up and you would go and you would honor that fire drill. But our learning here is that we would get up and walk single file, and we know that. But what do we do in functionalism? We say, well, okay, this is kind of important. That's not so important. So it's how we take what we've learned and we apply it. We may not do everything the way we've been taught. It's how we use our learning. Now, Gestalt psychology, we seek out patterns. Now let's think about this a little bit. Are you a Gestalt psychologist? Do you seek out patterns? Okay, so for example, somebody new comes into school or work or whatever it is, and when that person comes in, are you looking at how they behave based on their patterns? Oh, they said hi to me, they must be a friendly person. Oh, they didn't say hi to me, they're not a friendly person. Oh, that's Gestalt. What kind of patterns are we looking for? We go through and we say, oh, here's the pattern for this, or here's the pattern for that, or all of a sudden somebody behaves different than they do on a regular basis, and it really bugs us because, well, what's wrong with them? They didn't follow the usual pattern. So the more we talk about these and the more we apply them later, you'll be like, oh yeah, I see that. So Gestalt seeks out patterns. Almost classifies people, things, activities, behaviors into a group of patterns. So you say, well, this person's really, and fill in the blank based on the patterns that you see. Behaviorism, only the observable behavior. You don't think about, somebody's late to work, and we're like, somebody's late to work, and we just see that late to work, and we don't look at why they're late to work. Their dog died that morning. It was an awful morning. They stopped, and man, something happened, and so we just look at the behaviors. A great example of this, and we'll talk about it later. It's a very classic example in psychology. True story. Kindergarten girl. They were drawing these pictures. And what do you draw in kindergarten? It's happy. Everybody's happy, and the sun's yellow, and the clouds are blue, and the trees are green, and lo and behold, here's this girl's picture, and the sun is black, The sky has got black clouds. The trees are black. The grass is black. She just, everything's black in the whole picture. And they go through and they look at this girl and they're like, oh, she's major depressed. Something is wrong. What kindergartner draws everything in black? And then when the clinical psychologists began to look at her, went beyond behaviorism, what they found out was, true story, great example, the little girl didn't have any crayons. And so because the little girl didn't have any crayons, the guys and girls sitting next to her said, hey, you can borrow this crayon, I'm not using it. Well, what's the one crayon nobody was using? Well, it was the black crayon. So as a result, she drew everything in black. Not because she was depressed or psycho or anything like that, but that was the only color crayon she had. So we've got to be careful when we see somebody behaving, but on the same token, you got to say, hey, what am I? Am I a behaviorist? Do I look at the behavior? And we're like, oh no, I think I see every. Well, be careful. A lot of times, all we see is the behavior when we make that conclusion on what the reason for the behavior is. We don't worry about. We just see the behavior. Now we move over. We have humanistic psychology. Now, humanistic psychology means free will. It means we can act any way we want to act or be anybody we want to be. And if you live in America, we are based on